Are you ready to organize your amazing ideas into a powerful book? You are in the right place at the right time to learn how to write your book. Hi, I'm Joyce Class, and welcome to the Write Hour, nonfiction tips from the Write Coach team. We are so glad you joined us today. Well, hello, everybody. I am so glad to be here today, and I've got Mr. Vincent B. Davis II with us, and so glad to have you, Vince.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, do you go by Vince? I thought about that.
Vincent's my father. I'm Vincent most of the time. Yeah, to differentiate. Yeah.
Gotcha. So we'll keep that clear. Well, if you have any questions, because we're going to talk about some pretty deep stuff today, but get questions, please ask, and Vincent and I will be able to follow along here and help you with that. But like I've talked about before, I always want to give people a chance, to ask their questions, but I'll stop at a good stopping place. I'm not going to stop like in the middle of a sentence because I don't want to break us up here and break our train of thoughts, which for me being 80 is not really hard to do. Squirrel.
Yep.
So you feel my pain, Vincent?
Oh, I'm right there with you. Absolutely.
Good.
I will rabbit trail at some point while we're talking, so feel free to call me out if I do that. Yeah,
that's all right. I rabbit trail all the time. But I'm glad to have you. I met Vincent back in November at the Blue Ridge Conference, Blue Ridge Mountains Christian Writers Conference. I always have to slow down and say it. Yeah. I can never. It's not one that rolls off the tongue quickly.
No.
But I'd heard of Vincent from previous times when I attended, and I'd never had a chance to go to your class till this time. And then after listening to you, I was like, ooh, I need to have him on my podcast because he has so much good information that I know that my listeners will want to have this. And so, of course, we switched it up this year. Hey, Dar. We switched it up this year and we're live streaming. So we've got lots of fun questions for you and that we're going to go over, and Vince is going to tell us. So start off telling us a little bit about you and your journey to becoming a writer, as well as creating the Brookstone Creative Group.
Sure. So I have been writing my entire life. I still have pictures of myself running around with a Star Wars notebook when I was about 5 years old, writing some very bad fan fiction, I'm sure. So I've always wanted to be an author, but like so many others, I didn't really believe it was practical. I was, it's like, well, that's great. You can write, but you still have to pursue, a traditional education. You need to work a regular job. And it was kind of one of those things, maybe when you retire, maybe someday you'll have a chance, to be an author. So I like everyone else, I went to school. I studied business, actually. Everyone asks if I studied, English or if I studied history, because, I write historical fiction. But I actually studied business, and I was planning to be a financial planner. And I worked in that industry for several years while also serving in the military. I joined the reserves while I was in college. And but when I graduated, I was about to go full-time as a financial planner, and I realized if I'm going to do this, right now is the only time. If I'm going to try to pursue my dream, I don't want to wait. So, no kids, no wife, no mortgage. It was the most risk-free time. So exactly. if I was broke for a little bit, I could handle it. So quit my job, burned my bridges. So I couldn't retreat, so to speak, and took out a small loan to fund that first book, and published that first one in July of 2017. And it really, because I just left myself no other options. Like I had to succeed with it. And so I pushed really hard and researched like a mad scientist. And so it was a really awesome experience to just, kind of allow God to lead and open the doors that he wanted to open, and just trust that it was going to be provided for. And so that's how I started in the industry. And then since I started, I just focused I went all in on the Amazon marketing specifically. I didn't have any platform. I didn't have, any speaking engagements, didn't have an email list, didn't have a social media, didn't have any of those things. So I just focused primarily on how I could optimize my presence on Amazon.
Right.
And then through that, other people, just kind of oversaw what I was doing, and they liked it, what they saw, and then started hiring me. And then one thing led to the next, and then I started working with publishers, and it's really just been one thing after the next. And then, so Brookstone is actually one of the publishers I work with. That's not the company I created.
Okay.
Yeah, so Brookstone, I work with several different publishers, and Brookstone is one of the ones that, as their Amazon marketer, I came on board and joined their core team about a year ago, and I've worked with them and several other publishers as well. It's been excellent.
Awesome. We've got some Hey Vincents here, so you got a fan club already.
Yeah, I see some familiar names over there.
Yeah, wonderful. Welcome everybody. We're glad you're here, and if you want to share this live, you can, if you're on Facebook, you can share it to your page and other people will see it if you think it'd be helpful. Hey Sherilyn, she's here too. So tell us, other than, this is an obvious question and not an obvious question, but what are the advantages for authors to use Amazon? Because obviously, yes, it's a place to sell books, but what is it more advantageous that's for them to do it than, say, Barnes and Noble or any other avenue?
Great question. So the first thing I would say is, well, first of all, we know that books are sold on Amazon. Like the latest numbers that we have, it's pre-COVID. The last time I've seen empirical data, it was about 75% of ebooks or more. And then for paperbacks, it was about 45%, which is actually probably 45% of all paperbacks sold. All books, brick and mortar and everything. Yeah.
Are sold on Amazon.
In America, yes. And and that number is actually likely higher because that includes textbooks, and textbooks tend to be sold on, campuses and things like that. So in terms of just trade paperbacks, so many are being sold there. So it's something that we can't afford to ignore one way or the other. But my favorite thing about Amazon is that you can learn it and you can utilize their algorithms to your advantage, as opposed to some of those other sites out there. So say Apple Books, their ebook platform, or Barnes and Noble Nook. It's kind of a black box in terms of, like, we really don't know exactly how to optimize our presence on there. There's only so much that we can do. Whereas Amazon, there are so many steps that you can take, and it's kind of a continual process of improvement that you can take to, increase your presence on there and sell more books to the largest audience.
Yes. So it's the place to be, is the point.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If you're selling books, and especially in the time of COVID, and people aren't out speaking,
right.
They may be doing some online speaking, but it's not like you have a whole lot of other opportunities to sell other places. Now, did you, just out of curiosity, and this is off the beaten path here, but did you ever go to any other like local bookstores or like a Barnes and Noble and try to promote directly through them?
I did. I went to a couple local bookstores, and it was more of a, I guess, a personal endeavor. It wasn't something that I ever thought was going to be, like, financially, beneficial. It wasn't lucrative by any means, but it was certainly, it was nice to see my books on shelves. So I did a little bit of that.
Right.
So, and I encourage authors to do that, and especially depending on the type of book that you have, depending on your bandwidth, in terms of time and energy. When the world is open, I think doing things like that, it's certainly, there's a lot of things I believe I've missed opportunities on, such as, going and doing more book signings and doing more book clubs, and certainly moving forward, that's something I'm planning on doing.
Yeah, that is awesome. Because once upon a time when Lifeway was around, you could take you could take your book to them and go through a process, and they would put it in your local store. So that, but and I know of. Did you ever go to Sassafras on Sutton in Black Mountain, right near the?
I don't think I did. I think I've heard some other conferees talk about it, but no, I never made it.
shout out to Suzanne Bloomer, who owns it. It is the most adorable store. Well, it's 2 stories now because she finished off the 2nd story. It's in an old building in Black Mountain, and if I were going to build a bookstore, it would look like that. It was just, I mean, that's she and I think, like, the way she's got it set up and decorated and everything is like, I love this place. And so a place like that, she's very open to indie authors. So if you have a place like that near you, or especially if you're a Christian author who is either in that Black Mountain area, or if you go to the conference and you know Suzanne, she may even put your book in her store. It's always good to go, and that's a plug for going to conferences.
Absolutely.
You are going to meet amazing people like Suzanne at conferences who will then be able to open up the doors. Because guess what? If she owns a store, I bet you she knows other people who own stores, because they network together too, to say, hey, this is working in my store, this isn't, or have you had this problem? It just like writers do. You know, we network, we figure out what works, what doesn't work, and how to help each other. So yes, go to conferences, and yay for Suzanne. And if somebody knows her, Sherilyn, I don't know if you know her, tag her and let her know she's in our group, in the Write My Book group. So the next thing is where, and then this is the big question every writer probably asks you when you do these classes at conferences. You're probably like, where do I start? If I'm a new author, where do I start on Amazon? That's probably a very big question.
Where do you start?
Yeah.
That's a good question. So I think the first thing that authors can tend to forget about, this seems rudimentary, but a lot of times when authors start to talk to me, you know, whether they know me as the marketing guy or the Amazon guy, and they start asking questions, a lot of times they forget the initial, the pre-marketing things, right? So the most important thing you can do is prepare the best book possible. And that can't be stressed. And not just in terms of the prose, and in terms of the design. The cover is extremely important. Making sure it's edited and proofread properly. There's so many checks and balances in place that will punish you for not having that in place. Amazon, for ebooks specifically, they have trackers on the individual files, and they know if so many people are reading and get halfway and then quit. Amazon knows that from what we can tell, at least. And and so by writing a good book and making it so that the folks read it towards the end, and then go on to purchase more of your backlist or whatever, that Amazon is going to prioritize books like that are keeping people engaged. But then, and then everything else, from your cover design, your description, your title, we call that the symbiotic relationship, rather. Those three things, you want them to be like, someone should, in a blink of an eye, should be able to look at your title, description, and cover, and without even reading it all, be able to realize exactly what genre it's for and who it's written for. And so they can say, okay, this book is for me or it's not for me. And they should be able to do that instantaneously, because we know how short attention spans are. So, if you could market something that is not good, then we would all be rich and famous, and we'd be geniuses, right? We'd all be retired already. But you have to have the product right first. So, spending time. Go ahead.
I love it, Vincent, because I that's something that when I teach clients in my Write My Book boot camp, it's the same thing we're talking about. Is, you can have the best book in the world, but if you have this crappy cover and a title that doesn't make sense, or it looks really, when I say crappy cover, it looks really homemade. People can tell by just glancing at it that it's homemade. It doesn't have that professional polish to it. You are hurting yourself.
Absolutely.
You're shooting yourself in the foot. So if you can't get people to buy your first book, you're going to have even harder time getting them to buy your second book.
Exactly.
because their first one's like, well, I don't know, I didn't like that one so much.
Right.
And they're really going to be hard.
Absolutely. I've always said that the book cover, it's a one-time marketing expense.
Mm-hmm.
And as anyone who works in marketing would tell you, that's a gold mine. That's the rarest thing in marketing, is something that you only have to pay for one time and it continues to pay dividends. The book cover specifically is one thing I would never try to go cheap on. And I encourage authors frequently to think about their book cover. It's not an art design project. Our friends, our family members, whoever, that they might have a great eye for design or graphic design. They might be great photographers, whatever. But generally speaking, I always recommend working with a professional cover designer, because there's a science behind it.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many different elements, and understanding genre conventions and keeping up to date with the trends, and there's so many different layers to it. But it's not an art project. It's packaging for a commercial product that's sold worldwide. And just as any business would tell you, you have to you can't skimp on that. You gotta make sure that packaging is meticulously designed.
Yeah, and then, like I tell the people, even if you have to go get a second job for a little while to make the money to pay for it, it's going to pay you back in dividends. And same with editing, because the same thing with editing goes along with that, because I think that's like your
Yep.
cover and all that. That's your first thing, and then your editing is your second thing. You need a professional editor for the same reasons. If they get to reading it and it doesn't make sense, or it's just poorly written, it's going to hurt you. So
Right.
you've got to think about this as a business decision.
Yep.
And put on your big girl panties or your big boy britches and pay people what they're worth.
Right.
Even if you have to get that second job and have to delay it, it's worth delaying, putting
Absolutely.
something out there and putting out something properly versus just throwing it out there so you can get it out there and you're going to make a buck.
Expediency is your worst enemy in publishing.
It is.
Rushing things, it will always come back to bite you.
Yes, definitely.
Making sure things are done right, it will continue to pay dividends, forever, perpetually.
So after the cover editing, what's the next step they need to do?
After cover design, editing, interior design, getting the proper formats and everything, there's a 1,000 different ways to publish, and it's always it's a individualized conversation, because some people, when I found myself when I was starting to publish, and I at a crossroads, I could go one direction and I could go indie publishing, which it's not. As I always say, self-publishing doesn't really exist. It's an oxymoron. You can't actually self-publish. If you do, it's a memoir or something. It's not a book. You're going to have designers. You're going to have editors. You can't do it all yourself.
Right.
But indie publishing, I could go that route. And I know there was this stigma previously of, it was the easy way out, or it was option B if you couldn't succeed getting a traditional deal or whatever. And I certainly don't think that's the case anymore. It is just as difficult, but it's a different set of skills required and a different kind of patience required and everything else. So on the one hand, I had to learn self-promotion and marketing, and I had to learn how to run advertisements, and I had to learn how to be my own book manager, so to speak. On the other hand, if I went the traditional route, I would have to learn how to craft the perfect query letter and put together the perfect proposal in one sheet, and the art of getting an agent, and just two different different skill sets. And for myself, the going the indie route was it made a lot of sense, and I'm very glad I took that route. And then now, and there was back then too, I don't think I was as aware of them, but there's so many of these companies that operate in the middle. There's a lot of publishers that I work with, that Brookstone is one, Redemption Press is another. There's plenty of them out there that operate in this space where the goal is to give you the best of both worlds.
Right.
It's to give you the freedom and autonomy, and the royalties of being indie, but also having a team behind you and that, brings excellence to the table that you would get with traditional publishing. Now, I always advise authors to be as careful as possible, because just as often as they can be the best of both worlds, they can be the worst of both worlds too.
True.
I've seen a lot of companies that they're wolves in sheep's clothing, so to speak. And I wouldn't work with any of them, but it's essentially they take the rights with, through legal jargon, and they say that you're the legal holder, and they're going to take a chunk of the royalties. They're not bringing excellence to the table. So it's always just discernment is very important at this stage when you're deciding which direction to go, and just knowing that whatever direction that is, going all in it, and learning everything, taking the initiative. That's the one word that comes to mind a lot when I think about what it takes to succeed as an author. It's initiative.
Right.
You're not going to know everything. Even
No.
even now, I've been doing this every day of my life for 3 or 4 years now, and and I still there's things every day that I'm like, I don't remember how to do that, or I don't know how to do that. You have to take the initiative to learn, to use whatever resources you can find online, or read books, or take online classes. You have to do whatever is possible for you to do to to learn what you need to do to keep moving forward. And then, so that would be my advice there for the next step.
Yeah. So the next step. So then moving on to Amazon, when they get to Amazon, do they go make their author page first, or upload the book first, or which way do they go with that?
Yeah, great question. So typically speaking, I would upload the book first. I think you actually have to have at least one book on there before you can claim your Author Central profile. Okay. But yeah, the uploading process on KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, it's extremely simple. They are I think there's a lot of folks that are a little concerned by going self-publishing because of the digital aspect. They're going to be responsible for some of the online stuff, and that's reasonable. But as long as you're willing to take the initiative and learn it, there's nothing in it that requires a degree in IT. There's nothing complex. If you can operate a Facebook, you can definitely operate KDP.
Yeah, click here, go there, do this, do that.
Fill out. Yeah, what's the book title? What's the description? That kind of thing. So, at least the initial part is very, very basic, and should only take maybe an hour or two. I mean, that's the craziest thing, is that if you have finished files, you can have a book uploaded and delivering on Amazon within 72 hours, if not sooner.
Oh, that's awesome. So in your training, that one of them that I had seen from before, you talked about this magic formula for Amazon.
Right. Yes.
Tell us a little bit about this magic formula.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is my favorite thing to talk about, because I let people down, and then I build them back up again. So I call it the magic formula for a very particular reason. But in fact, of course, there is no magic formula. And if anyone says that there is, if you do A, B, and C, book sales, you're rich, you can retire. Of course, that doesn't exist, or all of us would be doing it. There is no magic formula for just instantaneous success, but there is a magic formula for maintaining your blood pressure and maintaining a proper mindset as you're going through book marketing. And so for me, the magic formula is traffic plus conversion equals sales. Mm-hmm. And it's simple, but it's really it's mind altering the way when you think about it like that, because what authors tend to do, myself included, tend to think about sales. How many sales did I get? And I remember specifically when I first joined the publishing community, when I first published, I would wake up every morning and it was like Christmas morning, or it was something far worse. What the opposite of Christmas, depending on what my book sales looked like.
The apocalypse had happened.
Yeah, a little bit. Because I'd wake up every morning, I'd check my book sales, and then if they were great, I'd be like, "This is amazing! I'm the next James Patterson. This is going to be incredible." And the next day, I'd be like, "I'm done. My career's over. Steam's lost." And of course, those are exaggerations, but that's what it felt like. So I think I think setting up stop focusing on sales. You cannot achieve sales intrinsically. But what we can do, what we can focus on, what we can give our energy to is we can give our energy to the things that we can control. And for me, that's the steps there are traffic and conversion.
Mm-hmm.
So in traffic, I break that down into multiple categories as well. But essentially, your traffic is anything that you can do to get people to your book page. And there's really two kinds. There's your own traffic. That's what folks would call your brand, your platform. That's your social media, your website, your email list. So you're providing this big group of people that have followed you or decided to follow you, and you send them to your book. That's your traffic that you're sending there. That can lead to sales. That that can be hard for first-time authors if they don't have that built up. You can certainly start building up your audience. There's no time too early to start building it up, but a lot of authors don't have it. I certainly didn't. I think on my first book I had 5 pre-orders, and I'm like, I have more than 5 relatives, so I was like, okay, all right, somebody's got some explaining to do, right? So I had no platform to speak of when I first published. So a lot of authors don't. So then we have to naturally focus on the other side of traffic, which is organic traffic. And that's really what I spend myself and my team, our Amazon team, we focus primarily on that. How do we get in front of people that are not our own traffic? People that have never heard of Joyce Glass or Marcy Keithley or Vincent Davis, right? They've never heard of us. They've never heard of our books before. They're scrolling. They're on Amazon just looking for their next book, and we want to be in front of them. And we need to conceptualize Amazon properly. It's not just a place where people shop. It is a search engine the same way that Google or Yahoo or Bing is. Yeah. And a lot of times people are going there, they're not typing in Vincent Davis, the man with 2 names, when they buy my book. They're typing in ancient Rome historical fiction. And then they see my book and they purchase it because it fits that query. So there's a lot we could talk about with organic traffic. How do we get in front of these folks, these shoppers? And there's a lot of different layers there. But that's the primary focus of when I say Amazon marketing. I think people probably have a similar reaction to the word marketing as I do sometimes. I think about a used car salesman, trying to convince someone that they, limited time, you can get, but of course
now, and you can get 2.
Right, exactly. So on the other hand, the Amazon marketing, at least the way that I conceptualize it, is it's not that kind of marketing at all. It's the perfect introverts marketing. It's amazing because you don't have to do anything. You're not trying to sell anything. You're just trying to really engage with Amazon's algorithms in such a way that your book shows up in places that it wouldn't have otherwise in front of the readers that are looking for a book like yours. Yeah, that's what Amazon marketing is. And then if you do that enough, we know that the readers are there. The shoppers, the number of shoppers on Amazon it's incomprehensible, if we can show up enough, if we can get in front of the right readers often enough, then that's that's one thing that we would want to do.
Yeah, so Dar's talking about keywords. Give just a quick explanation for some people who might not know what keywords are when you're talking about that.
Keywords are extremely important, and I'm actually going to be teaching a seminar about just this one topic coming up in the next couple of weeks. Keywords are they make up part of your metadata, which is essentially the internal, shoppers are not going to see it, readers aren't going to see it. It's what you are informing Amazon or anyone else that your book is connected to those particular terms, right? So when you're choosing your keywords, there's a lot behind it. But essentially the biggest thing is that you want those keywords to be what people are typing in. Right. So I would want my keywords to be ancient Rome historical fiction novel or something like that. The longer the better. Sometimes you want to truncate it and make it real specific, but other times you kind of try to keyword stuff, and there's a lot of different levels to it. But essentially I'm telling Amazon, when someone types this in, I want my book to show up for it. And then in choosing those terms, the most important thing is I've worked with a ton of publishers and individual authors, and very few get this right, because Amazon doesn't do a great job of explaining what it is. I'll see a lot of I'll be working with a Christian living nonfiction, book, and so one of the keywords will be Christian or Christian book, let's say. Well, that fits, of course it does. It does fit, but the problem is that with a term like that, you're going up against books. You're going up against all the Joyce Meyers and Beth Moores and Andy Stanleys of the world. You're going up against anyone with the first or last name Christian, any famous author with those first or characters with the first or last name Christian, Christian in the title, so Christian children's books.
Right. That meaning your book, if that's the only keyword you put in, will be so far down that people maybe in the next century might find it.
Right. Yeah, it would take a very determined shopper. Yeah, it's much too broad. So the goal is, that's the ditch on the one side of the road, is picking something. So for mine, let's say I said historical novel. Okay, well that perfectly applies. I write about ancient Rome historical fiction, right? It perfectly applies, but that's a huge broad topic, and unfortunately, at least at this point, I don't have the platform or the name recognition to show up that high for a term that broad. That's going to be the Ken Follett and Bernard Cornwell's and some of those other really big historical authors. So I need to get a little bit more narrow. So you got to do your research, because the ditch on the other side of the road is picking something so specific that no one's typing it in. So if I was like novels set in late Republican era, Roman Republic or something like that, like nobody's typing that in probably. So I could be the number one result. I could be the only result. And if nobody's typing it in, it doesn't really help. So it's about finding terms that folks are actually searching for, while also, they're not too competitive or broad for you to rank for them. And so I use a tool called Publisher Rocket quite a bit for that.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, I use Publisher Rocket. There's a few others. KD Spy is one. There's another, but it's called Helium, but it's very expensive. I wouldn't recommend it for most folks. But yeah, Publisher Rocket, highly recommend to any author.
Publisher Rocket.
And KD Spy.
KD Spy as like a spy.
And that one I haven't used as much, but it's definitely valuable. But Publisher Rocket, honestly, if it went under, I'd have my team and we would have a hard time keeping our jobs because we use it so much. And of course, there are organic way to find keywords. You can go to Amazon and type in, the base keyword. So for me, it'd be, historical fiction space A, and then see what comes up. It maybe it's Asian. Okay, well, I don't write. My books aren't set in China or something like that. So that wouldn't work. But the next one, maybe it's adventure. So historical fiction adventure, that might work. So you type it in on Amazon's actual search bar, and you can kind of determine a few things about what consumers are actually searching for that way. Because if it's coming up on Amazon, that generally means that somebody has been typing it in previously.
Yes, definitely love that. So traffic is what you are bringing into Amazon, whether it's through, like you said, email, website, social media, and then the next part of the formula was conversions. So how are we converting these people? Are they? Great
question. Yeah, that's the other part that is, so important. And so this is why it's really the magic formula more than anything. It's magic because it allows you to narrow in on what you need to focus on if your books aren't selling. So it's not just like throw my hands up, like I just can't get this thing to sell. Because I've been in that position myself, and I've seen so many other people, and it's so frustrating. There's nothing more discouraging than not having success and having no reason or justification as to why that is. So this, what I call the magic formula, allows you to focus in traffic and conversion equals sales. So just forget sales, focus on those two elements. If we have the traffic, let's say you have a platform and you're bringing people to the table, And then you're also, you know that you've got your metadata right. You've got your key, you did your keyword research. You've made sure the book is in the proper categories. You're running Amazon advertisements. You're doing price promotions. Whatever it is to make your book jumpstart in the algorithms and get in front of new people. If that's not resulting in sales, then what's the other part of the equation? Conversion. So we need to look at that. What about the book when people land on the page? What about it is not making them hit that purchase button? And there's generally speaking, there's so many different elements of conversion, but there's really 5 that we look at as things that we can actually influence and change if we need to. And that would be the symbiotic relationship that I mentioned with the cover, title, and description. Very, very important there to make sure those are right. And then they're immediately connected to the genre. It's the most into the target reader. So a lot of times I'll encourage authors to sit down and write out who their target reader is, their number 1 target reader. And ask yourself, would the cover and the title appeal to them? Because a lot of times I think that we tend to focus a little bit too much on what we think the cover should be. I think a lot of authors, especially first-time authors, they want to stuff images into it, like, "Oh, this happens at the very end, and it's super symbolic, and it means a ton. We need to have that somewhere in the cover." And that's the first thing that I'll notice about a more amateurish designed cover is when there's way too much happening. The attention spans are so small, and they see a thumbnail about this big when they're on Amazon. We want something that is immediately going to grab their attention, and they're immediately going to know, is this book for me? Does it have anything to do with what I typed in? Right. And then so you cannot overstate those things. But then the other 2 things are just as important, but they're easier to influence, and that would be your price and the reviews. And your price that's a large conversation, but I see a lot of authors price themselves out of the market a little bit. Especially on the ebooks. I've found that with paperbacks, and this is just my experience, I don't have empirical data to support this, but I would say that generally speaking, I've found that paperback authors paperback readers rather, are not as price sensitive. The difference between $12.99 and $14.99 is not vast. It's not, you're getting a physical copy that you can touch and smell and flip through and put it on your shelf and then sell it or keep it on your shelf forever when you're done with it. As opposed to an ebook's just writes to a digital file. The difference between $2.99 and $4.99 is extreme. And I see that on a day-to-day basis, the difference between those sales numbers, generally speaking. So there's always a large discussion around price, but the biggest thing that I encourage authors is don't get locked into one. Don't think this is what there's a big difference between cost and value. And I think authors they're afraid to mark their price too low because then they feel like they're undervaluing themselves or something like that. And then that can be the case, certainly. But the biggest thing that I can tell authors is to allow yourself to be fluid. Go back and change it. You try $4.99. And if you're not getting the sales that you want, that might be one of the things that is keeping that. So you could lower it, for the ebook. You could lower that to say $2.99 or $3.99, and if it helps, then great. You found out, you use the magic formula to find out what the problem is, and if it doesn't make a difference, then you might be able to leave it at the higher price tag and focus on some of those other elements. And then reviews, there's no particular. I get asked all kinds of questions about reviews, and I hear more kind of conspiracy theories about reviews than anything else.
How important are they?
They are very important. You can't overstate the importance, but I hear a lot of nonsense about them, such as once you hit blank number of reviews, Amazon starts to show your book more, or Amazon starts, pushing. They'll start putting marketing dollars behind the book. That's absolutely not true. I've got 6 books published, and the one with the most reviews has about 600 now. It's about 580 or so. And I have another one that's, maybe 200. and I don't think that the Amazon markets them much differently. I don't think that plays a role. What matters is, and this is why there's no absolutely magic number, is that it's going to come down to each individual consumer as to whether or not the reviews that you have on your book are enough. Some folks will go through and they'll read them all. They'll read through the reviews. For myself, as a Amazon shopper, generally speaking, if it's not a more expensive purchase, I'm not going to read all of the reviews, but I'm going to look and I'm going to see how many reviews do they have and what that gold star rating is. So if it's a 4.5 and there's 300 reviews, I'm going to say, okay, there's a lot of social proof there. There's a lot of folks that are telling me that this is worth my time and energy and my investment. So it's very it's important to get more. It's just, you can never have too many.
And that's probably another whole interview in itself.
Yeah, it is, because when there's tactics and things you can do to get more reviews, but it's one of those things where it's like, I want authors to know it's not the most important thing in the world in terms of like, you're not going to hit 100 reviews or whatever and then suddenly the game has changed. It's going to be the same. You're just going to convert more of that traffic over time than you would have with less reviews.
Because you have more social proof?
Social proof. And it acts almost like, water cooler conversations before. When you can see all these people saying, hey, this book is great. You got to buy it. This is life-changing, page turning, whatever. And so the more you have, the better. I think I tell my authors that are launching a book, I always say the two most important things that you can do right at the time of the launch is focus on your first 50 sales and your first 20 reviews. And the 20, it's I hesitate to give a number because so many people use a magic number for reviews and it doesn't exist. But I say 20 because I think that's really where there starts to be enough social proof that a total stranger who's never heard of you or your book can still find, you have enough reputation built up that they're willing to listen.
It gives you some validation. Hey, there's more than 5 people.
Right.
Saying
5 people could all be family members or something. Technically they're not supposed to leave reviews, but they certainly get away with it from time to time.
Or whatever. And so 20 people are like, hey, then if 20 people are saying this is good, then it's probably pretty good.
Right.
So I get that. Well, so it's traffic plus conversions equals sales. And I love how you put that emphasis on that, because if you are focusing so hard on sales, you're missing the boat over here, getting your traffic and getting your conversion to work to get those sales.
Exactly.
So, and like you said, honestly, you have no control over sales. But you can control what you're doing to get your traffic. Right. And you can control and tweak these things you're talking about for conversion. I think you said there were 5. It was symbiotic relationship, price and review. Was there something else?
The 3 that make up the symbiotic relationship. So there's a total of those 5. And of course, there's so many other conversion aspects, but those are the 3 that we can really influence, And because those are the 5 that we can influence, there's so many things that we can't, like the other books that show up and the customers who also bought, or the sponsored products related to this item. Those things, they can distract your readers from your page and take them to buy somebody else's book. There's so many things like that we can't, we can't influence. We can't influence that their other tab has Facebook open and their buddy just messaged them, so they're going over to the other page and forgetting about book shopping altogether. We can't influence any of that. So we have to really, really focus on those 5 elements that we can influence. They need to be perfect.
Love that. Dar has a good question here.
That is a good question.
How significant is the review confirmed purchase review?
That's a great question, Dar.
Verified purchaser, yeah.
Yeah. So that's a good question. I always encourage people, if you can get them to be verified, that's always great. But I've seen no data to support that that there's an intrinsic difference in the way that consumers trust to those reviews. You know what I mean? I would say that the majority of the time, authors and other folks that are selling products on Amazon, those are the ones that are paying the most attention to things like that. I think
Yeah.
the average consumer probably isn't even noticing. The
Yeah.
biggest difference between the verified purchase reviews and the non-verified purchase reviews, the verified ones will tend to show up higher. So if your verified review purchases, you know, when they go down there, and of course they can search through and click the number of stars that they want to read the reviews for and everything like that. You know, if all the verified reviews are bad and all the non-verified are good, then that might look a little strange, and then they would be seeing the bad ones first. So, but in terms of like, if somebody's willing to leave a review, but they didn't buy the book on Amazon, so it won't be verified, I'd still want the review. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I know, like you're talking about consumers, I know for me, if I'm looking to buy something and I go to skim reviews, that's what I'm actually doing. I'm skimming them. You know, I'm not like going, "Ooh, that one's verified. Ooh, that one's not." You know?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I certainly
I
haven't
just want to see what they have to say. You know,
Right.
like, did they say yes, no? Well, this is okay, but you know, that kind of thing. And so
Yeah.
I wouldn't stress too much about that. Right.
No.
So this next question is one that I'm sure you hear often, and I hear this all the time. Do authors need an email list if they sell on Amazon?
Absolutely. In my opinion, your email list is the most important digital real estate that you have. It is because here's the thing. I think most of us are building up for the long haul. You know, if you have one book to publish, and you're going to publish this book, and you want to do everything you possibly can to sell this one book, then no, I wouldn't worry about it. I mean, you could set one up and have it in place, but no, not really. But if you want to be an author, right, you want to come back and do this again, if you want to do this multiple times, there is no better way to stay in connection with your readers than through an email list. And the fact of the matter is that social media is excellent. I love Amazon, obviously. I'm here talking about it. But those are companies that can change. They can, there can be a shift in society in which everybody suddenly runs away from Instagram. Nobody wants to be on Instagram anymore. And if you put all your energy in Instagram, then you could be left out to dry. Now, it's certainly not to say you shouldn't use social media, because it's such an excellent way to get in touch with people and to influence them. But your email list is yours, and barring something catastrophic, that's going to remain. So there's no changes that are going to happen in, Amazon could change. It could implode. They could completely alter the way that they do things. And I always say, everybody thinks of me as the Amazon guy. What's that?
And in the light of everything that's been going on the past few weeks.
Exactly.
Government may change rules too.
Absolutely.
Where they have the control that they have, and then it doesn't give you the influence that you maybe once had, or they get sued out of business, which is highly unlikely, but yeah,
but you have to hedge against those things for those that are in this for the long haul, because we can probably see the next couple years, and in general, I don't think Amazon's going to go anywhere in the next couple years. I don't foresee them changing things so much that I would want to sell my books primarily somewhere else other than there. But it's possible, down the line. We have to hedge ourselves against that risk, and because the only thing we know about this industry is that it has continued to change rapidly over the past several decades, and I see no stopping that trend. So your email list, don't think that you have to have a big one when you publish. You don't have to do artificial things to grow it. It's not like you have to have at least 1,000 before, I started my email list when I published my book, and it had 0 emails in it until I published that book. And I just had a link in the back for people to follow that link, go and join my email list. And it's slowly grown over that time. And the reason it's a very good list is because they all came from my books, so they're high quality lists. They tend to engage quite well. So in terms of building for the future, my email list is more important to me than anything. I would rather have subscribers to my email list than reviews or sales or anything else, because, maybe 1 in 10 subscribers is going to be really, really active and buy everything I put out. But over time, that's going to mean that's a career. If you have a few thousand folks that follow you that well, over time, I mean, you really can make a career out of that,
Exactly. Well, it's a real estate thing.
Mm-hmm.
You own the real estate of your email list and your website. Right. You do not own Amazon, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, any of them, LinkedIn that you can think of. You don't own that real estate. And you can say what you want to say in your emails. You're not going to be filtered, and the algorithm's not going to change, so nobody's seeing you.
Right.
Because you said something that was against the algorithms kind of thing.
Yep.
So that's why email's important. It's a way to connect and communicate with your readers now. And that's what this whole season 14 is about, is connecting with your readers. And if you're connecting with your readers, then you're going to be doing the traffic to lead them to Amazon to buy your book. So I love that you and I are obviously on the same page on that one, and I figured we were. So, but you talked a little bit about organic growth on Amazon, but what are some, I guess, the things that you can do on Amazon to grow organically?
That's a good question. So one of the first things I would say, and this is probably putting the cart before the horse, so I'll go back. One of the most important things I think you can do is have multiple books out there. Mm-hmm. That's really where the magic starts to happen, I think, is when you have more than one book that you can market, and then you kind of cross feed them to each other. So at the end of one book, it's like, hey, go get the other one. At the end of that book, hey, go get this other one. And you can afford to be a little bit more aggressive with your advertising and your budget for various marketing things, because you can trust that, if I'm running advertisement and I'm spending, a couple $100 a month or whatever on advertisements, if I can only make up to, say, $3 a sale, for every sale, I'm going to have to sell, a good chunk before I'll make that back. And that may or may not happen. Hopefully, if your ads are working properly, you'll make that and a lot more. Right. But if not, if the ads aren't working great, then, it's going to be, you're really going to kind of be going into the red a little bit. So when you have multiple books, you can be a little bit more aggressive and trust that some of those people, hopefully a decent amount of those folks that buy book 1 will go on to book 2 and so forth. And so you can it really opens up the doors.
So they kind of piggyback on each other, the ads.
Exactly. So, and the way that the promotions are kind of set up and everything, you can kind of have a book being actively promoted at all times, and then using that as the door into all the rest. So none of them are ever being ignored or kind of floundering for too long. Mm-hmm. So for instance, in late December, it actually crossed over with the Christmas season, which I wouldn't recommend generally, but I ran a big promotion on one of my books. It was book 2 in a series of 4 currently. And it fueled into all the other ones. They all, really, shot down in the ranks, got to pretty low rank. Got, most of them were in the top 10 of my categories. And so, and without like really actively pushing those books, it was just through getting as many eyeballs as possible onto this one that I was discounting and pushing really hard, and it funneled into all the rest. So in terms of organic growth for yourself, as the author, that's going to be the best thing that you can do. Mm-hmm. But then, another thing that I want to mention is, people can get ahead of themselves when they first publish their book on Amazon. This is something that I'm very surprised we don't hear talked about more. Mm-hmm. Even with folks that are real familiar with Amazon, is that your first 50 sales are so important, because those first 50 sales are the ones that are really informing Amazon what your book is and who it should be shown to. So if you immediately are like, hey, I want to hit a bestsellers list. I just published this thing. I'm going to tell all my friends and my family, and I'm going to tell everybody to go get this book. Let's say you write Christian Living, but then all your friends and family are big Harry Potter nerds. So they all go buy the book. And so Amazon is going to get it in their head, oh, everybody that likes this book also likes Harry Potter. We should show this book to fans of Harry Potter. And so then moving forward, it's going to be shown to random people who are Harry Potter fans, and they're going to have no idea why the book is there, and it's not going to do anything. And I've experienced this firsthand with, like I've said, I write primarily ancient Rome historical fiction, but I wrote one that was a crime thriller set in the 20s and 30s. And I thought still historical, similar, tone and, all that kind of thing. So I thought maybe a lot of my readers would be willing to, if they like my writing, they'd be willing to come over to a new genre to read it. And a lot of them were. And that has come back to bite me quite a bit, because then even when the book is doing well, Amazon is showing this prohibition crime thriller to fans of ancient Rome. And of course it's not converting because it's the wrong crowd.
Because if they don't specifically know you,
right,
they're not going to do it. Whereas your fans who knew you, like, hey, I like this style of writing. This is a little different.
Exactly. Yeah. If they hadn't read my Rome books, and if I hadn't emailed them directly about it, I very, very highly doubt that almost any of them read that type of book regularly.
So what could you have done differently there? Is there a different way to do that?
What I would have done differently is I would not have mentioned it to my email list, at least at first. I would have published the book, been a little bit more conservative on the front end. Maybe I wouldn't have hit the bestsellers list I did, because I wouldn't have that big surge of traffic from my email list, but that's okay. I would have sacrificed that, because long term it would have been much better for me. I would run Amazon advertisements that are very, very directed towards readers of this kind of mafia crime thriller, that kind of book. And once I had enough of that Amazon had a good picture, of who that book belongs to and who it's being sold to, then I could tap into those other markets, like my email list or my social media or whatever. But I think specifically on the front end, you want to be very protective of who's buying that book. And one little trick you can do, if you have, a lot of supporters, a big street team, or if you have the marketing budget to support it, would be to encourage folks to buy a book alongside yours. They're buying both at the same time. I've not really done that, but I have heard other folks do that quite a bit. Like I could have instructed 15 or 20 people in my genre to purchase that book and The Godfather at the same time, so that the two would be paired.
Yeah,
that kind of thing could work. I can't speak to that theory real directly, but I've heard it work from people in the industry that I trust.
That's a good concept, and I love the idea what you said about focusing the first 50 people in the genre that you're in, and getting them to there. So obviously, if you're doing Christian Living, then yeah, go ahead and stay there. But if you are kind of crossing over any kind of genre, fiction to nonfiction kind of thing, then you definitely need to do that, which is something that I will be doing down the road, because I am writing a fiction book, but I mainly write nonfiction. So
right,
good to know, because the nonfiction reader of my book, Christian Living, is probably going to not be the exact same person. Some of them, but not most of them are not going to be fiction readers for suspense. So
right,
you got to do that. Good thing to know. Well, I love to ask this question because it's always good to hear what people do, but tell us a little bit about your personal writing time. I mean, what are some things that work for you and don't work for you? And when do you write? Are you a, early morning riser, midday, evening, or just when the mood strikes? How do you set up your writing time?
That's a great question. I definitely fluctuate a little bit. I'll go through seasons when I write in the morning, but I would say more often than not, I write at the end of the workday. I typically right after I get back from the gym, and if it's early enough, at least I drink I drink a cup of coffee. Um, I always listen to classical music. Um, I always listen to classical music. I have playlists after playlist after playlist on Spotify. Not like Beethoven as much. Maybe should listen to more of the classics, but symphonies and different orchestras now, neoclassical, I guess you'd call it. I listen to that kind of thing all the time when I write. That it inspires different emotions or gets me in a proper headspace. And then, as you can see with the gentleman behind me, I have my room it's filled with ancient Rome and Egyptian and Greek paraphernalia. I've got statues and swords and all kinds of different elements of historical Roman stuff. So it kind of keeps me in the mood, so to speak.
Yeah, in that era.
Yeah.
Dar has a question here. Who's your favorite? I'm thinking she's talking about music.
Composer.
Yeah.
Man, it's going to be hard to pronounce his name. His name is Ludovico Einaudi. If you type in Ludovico, he'd probably come up. But he's an Italian composer who he's still around and making music, and some of his stuff is just absolutely beautiful. But then I like soundtrack, movie soundtracks, Lord of the Rings, that kind of thing. Anything that doesn't have words, because then I'd get distracted probably. But
I can't do songs with words because then I want to start singing along.
Yeah, you get distracted. Yeah, no.
My mind starts going over. Oh, you remember that time? Yeah.
Right. And I will unabashedly say I listen to the Titanic soundtrack a lot because it's very good. I'm a 26-year-old male, and I'm happy to admit it. I listen to the Titanic soundtrack, and I may tear up sometimes. But no, it's so any kind of music like that that kind of gets you in the right headspace. So, and then sometimes what I typically do is I try to typically write between 1,500 and 2,000 words a day. But then, especially once I get towards the end of the book, or sometimes I'll just pick a random day. I'll pick a Friday, and instead of hanging out with my buddies or, watching football or whatever, I will, I'll pick a day on the weekend, and I'll just write like 6,000 to 10,000 words all at once, and just kind of like sit down and just buckle down. And then I've found that a lot of times some of that's my best writing, because you just get into that kind of writer's, it's like a runner's high, but it's a writer's high. You get so locked in
that zone and in your little world.
Yeah. So I've made that, previously it had just been kind of spontaneous, but I'm starting to make it where it's like, it's a part of my, writing discipline, is like periodically, maybe once a month, maybe even, once every month and a half, I'll pick a day, and just, probably write for 6 to 8 hours throughout the night. It's a lot of fun too. I've enjoyed it. I don't think it's for everybody. Most people probably wouldn't like it, but I enjoy it.
Well, it depends, and I think it's like anything else. You got to develop your writing muscle.
Absolutely.
Once you can hit 2 hours, and then 3 hours will go by really fast. I know it does.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh wow, I've been doing this for 3 hours. I didn't realize that, and I've got other stuff I need to get to.
Right.
But
that's right.
I like that. I'll suggest something to you, because I don't know if you've heard this, and maybe you can take up the challenge here. But do you know who Chris Fox is? Have you ever heard of him?
I have heard of Chris Fox. I've read some of his stuff. He's very knowledgeable.
So did you ever read the 5,000 words per hour?
No, I think I own that one. I think it's on my Kindle, but I don't think I've gotten around to read it yet.
Read it, because you will knock them out faster.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. I'll check it out. 5,000 an hour sounds like a lot.
Well, I've got up to, I think it was like 2,500. I haven't got to 5,000 yet.
That's great. 2,500 is awesome.
Yeah. So. And it's one of those, essentially, in his thing, and you probably do this, is he's not worrying about, grammar and storyline and everything at this point. He's just knocking it out.
Yeah, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, but even after he knocks it out, when he goes and edits, he says he can edit even more per hour than 5,000 words, because he's learned how to do it faster. Yeah. So definitely check that out. And anybody listening,
I will.
5,000 words per hour by Chris Fox. Love that one. And he's also got one called Lifelong Writing Habit, if you're having trouble creating the habit. And he's got exercises in there for you to do to help you learn how to create the habit. And so I love that one. Well, thank you so much. So tell us some words of encouragement you can have, because I'm sure you've heard it. Marketing for most writers is like the bane of their existence.
Absolutely.
They want to do it, but they don't want to do it.
Right.
Or more
Yeah.
like this way, they want it done, they don't want to do it. And
Right.
so learning how can be hard. So what advice can you give them for people struggling with that, especially on?
I think I would tell them, first of all, that a book can have a million lifetimes. So some authors, I think, can be too quick to jump to the conclusion of like, this isn't working, or too quick to jump to, I've already made it, this is awesome. And there'll be fluctuations. And sometimes you don't need to shift the plan, you just need to improve on it, So you might be doing everything right, you just need to, tweak your ads and run better advertisements, or you need to, work with your metadata, your keywords some more, things like that. I think that perseverance and initiative are the two characteristics. So I think if you can look in the mirror and honestly say that you have those characteristics, then I think that you will make it. It takes the ability to endure some. I think every author has that to some degree, because you don't sit down and write something for 500 hours. You don't sit down and write 70,000 words or whatever with no guarantee that it'll ever pay off in any capacity. That takes a special kind of quality.
Yeah.
But then I feel like a lot of authors kind of lose that mindset when they actually get to the publication. So it's like the big bad wolf, that we have. It's out there in the distance. It's scary, the publication, but it can be tamed. It takes time, just give yourself multiple chances, because books can have a million lifetimes. You can resurrect them by changing the cover, or by changing your strategy, or by, working with somebody new. That would be my encouragement, is like, don't give up. I know that's cliche, but it's something that I see a lot of authors do. This writing thing's not for me. It's like, you were almost at the finish line. Should have kept going.
Exactly. Vincent has given some excellent information here, and he has a way that you can learn more about Amazon and how to promote yourself and learn all this. Because I took, what was it? You had a 3-day class, was it, at the conference you did?
Mm-hmm.
And I will be honest, by the 3rd day, my head was tired and over, and he was talking numbers, and my brain just went, zoop, I'm done. And I'm like, I'm going to have to catch this on the second round, when on the audios. And it was excellent information. It wasn't that it was boring. I was just on information overload personally.
Conferences can do that for sure.
Yes. And so I didn't want to give you an impression that he was boring. He's not boring. But he has a course coming up. So tell us a little bit about your course. And if you are on here, you can actually, I've got a code that I'll give you in just a second, that you can get 50% off. So you tell them about it, and then I'm going to put the link in the comments while you tell them about it.
Sure. So we've talked about a lot of the different, we've brushed on a lot of the different things that we're going to be going over in the course, but we kind of sat down and realized that the lack of understanding on Amazon is it's pervasive right now, especially with Christian authors. But for whatever reason, at Christian conferences and in Christian communities, it's not talked about enough. And I'm sure there's reasons for that, but we need to understand, because we need our books need to be where our readers are. And so we decided, Brookstone, a creative group, and I are teaming up we're doing a 6-week seminar, workshop, whatever you'd like to call it, where we're going to be digging into all of these various elements much deeper. So we're going to be doing, the first week is going to be keywords and categories. We're going to be digging into the metadata and making sure that we build that foundation properly. After that, we're going to dig into the intricacies of Amazon ads and free promotions, 99-cent promotions, and all the different tools that are available to us. Everything from starting and getting that metadata to how to build your email list from Amazon, and how to create sell-through between books. And I really hope it's going to be kind of a comprehensive overview of Amazon that will really give authors the tools that they need to move forward. And and sell their books.
And is this code case sensitive? I just thought about that. Do you know?
No, it's not. As far as I know, I think it was typed in all lowercase. The right coach without any
Okay.
But yeah, that's it. That should work, and that should be for 50% off on the course.
Yeah, it's 50%. And somehow there's an extra 5 in there, but I guess when I was trying to do the percentage, it's
505% off. We will pay you to take this course.
Oh my gosh! So it's 50% off. The code is the right coach, all lowercase. If you try it like that and it doesn't work, do all lowercase. But what is the title? Do you have a title for this course? What's it called?
Amazon Zero to Hero.
I love it. Amazon Zero to Hero. And as you can see, Vincent is full of information to help with this, and you're going to learn so much. I learned so much just from the 3 days that I was in the course with him. And, you know, my head still kind of spins with it because I'm probably like most writers. I want to know this stuff, but after a while, it's like, ooh, wait a minute, where do I start?
Right.
And I think that's where the course is going to come in handy, breaking it down.
Yeah, I'm going to get less of an overview, more of the kind of you know, the detail, the gritty, like what this is your step by step. So hopefully, because I feel the same way. When you're given a broad overview of something as large as Amazon, it can be a little overwhelming, I think. So we'll get more into the specifics of this is what you're going to need to do to make it happen, you know.
Yeah.
And Joyce, is my email included in the show notes? Feel free to share that with anyone if people have questions about Amazon. Or
I will put it in there.
Okay.
I know I put the website, but I don't think I put the email, but I will go back and add it and we'll get off.
Yeah, feel free to share that with anyone that if anyone has questions just on Amazon in general, or feel free to reach out.
Put it right here too. It's Vincent is it at Brookstone or at what? Yeah,
that's I have about a dozen different ones, but yeah, BrookstoneCreativeGroup.com is one of them.
BrookstoneCreativeGroup.com. Email for more questions. So yeah, and hopefully I got that typed right. I'm looking. It's Vincent Brookstone Creative. Yeah. All right. So definitely email him if you have any questions about the course, or if you got a quick question about Amazon and he can guide you in the right direction, he will. And you're welcome, Marcy. So glad you were here. I thank you. Marcy was like, thanks. Great stuff, Vincent. So keep this all in mind. And I appreciate you coming and sharing this with us. It has been extremely helpful and fun. And, you know, for something, like I said, you know, most writers, it just, especially when they're first hearing about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's like drowning in the deep end of the pool. Like, what?
Absolutely.
And just remember, break it down step by step. And he's going to do that in the course. But your first step, like he talked about at the beginning of the interview, is write something fabulous and make sure you get it edited. And that's your first start to getting with Amazon, is write something fabulous that gives something people to talk about. And then move into learning these things and just take it a step at a time. And if you've got to watch this video 50 times to catch on to what he's even talking about, do it. Because I've been in this industry too for 10 years as well. And so a lot of this stuff, it's familiar to me. I'm comfortable with it. I got it. But I know a lot of people listening to this is like, do what?
Yeah. No, it is. I mean, especially for creatives, right? This is not where our brain is, like, that's not what we've trained up, so to speak, a lot of us. So it takes some time, but you can train up those muscles, those, you know, marketing muscles, and you know, the Amazon ocean is very wide, but it's really not that deep, at least in most areas. So it can be very overwhelming at first, but then, you know, after you get through it a little bit, then you're kind of like, where do I go from here? Like, how can I improve from this? You know, so, you know, and watch the video as many times as you need to, but feel free to email me as well. And with any questions, I'm always happy to help, because I was in the same position just a few just a few years ago myself, and I know exactly what that was like. And fortunately, I met some incredible people that were willing to help me. So I'm always willing to help others as well.
Awesome. And that's the great thing about the writing community.
Mm-hmm.
Usually there are people, we do help each other out, because my gift is editing and coaching writers. That's my gift. Marketing, I learned really quick. That was not my gift. Because when I started off coaching, I'm going to do it all. I can help them with everything. And then I realized, no, I really don't want to help them with everything.
Right.
Because marketing is a different beast than the writing and editing, and so it's well, for me, it's too much as as my own business to do that. And so so I actually talked to someone today who I mentioned your name to, by the way. Well, thank you, everybody. And now Dar had one more quick question that I was going to go back over here. I think this is it. If writing nonfiction, would author continue multiple books in a series type or genre type?
That's a good question. And Dar, I think the answer to that would be, for me, it wouldn't need to be the exact same, but I would want it to be the same audience. So if you write primarily to, say, 40 to 50-year-old Christian women, I would keep it, generally speaking. Sometimes you just have to follow where the muse leads you, so to speak. If you're being called to write something, then write that. But generally speaking, the closer you can keep something within the realm of who your readers are, who your audience is, that's gonna be what allows you to build up your presence, and kind of establish yourself. Right now I'm writing pretty much all all ancient Rome. I'm going to circle back and do a few things with the crime thrillers, but eventually I want to write all kinds of stuff. I love all of history. I want to write World War II and Revolutionary War and, all kinds of different time periods. Right now, I want to establish myself. And I know that if I bounce around too much, it's going to be much, much harder to do that. So I'm focusing on that until I can make a career, until I can, just write full time. And when I get to that level, and I know that I have, enough royalties coming in that I can, support myself and my family no matter what, then at that point, then, I might be a little bit more loose with what I'm writing and go for more passion projects, so to speak. But definitely try to keep it within the same target market if possible.
Yeah. And then she had one more question from earlier up here I found. Do you recommend purchasing a published book teaching you how to sell on Amazon, or does Amazon teach you? Well,
absolutely.
Well, and we can give recommendation. That's where he is.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great resources out there. I haven't written a book for on Amazon marketing at all, and when people have asked me quite a bit, like, why haven't you written a book on Amazon? I'm like, because there's already ones out there that are better than what I would write. David Gaughran, Gaughran. David Gaughran is incredible. He's got incredible books out there. And there's several out there that are, you have to be discerning, because there's a lot of nonsense on book marketing out there, because I think it's a hot topic right now. A lot of people are publishing books on how to sell your book on Kindle, and check the reviews, make sure they're qualified. But David Gaughran is incredible. I listen to everything he puts out, and and really my knowledge, all I am is I've been doing this for a while, so I have some experience of my own, but I'm really just a collection of all the wise folks that I've listened to, and he's certainly one of them. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah. Did I spell his name right? G-A-U-G?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So if you want a book on writing, that would be it.
Yes. And then here she says, we have no control over Amazon's recommending to others. And no, I don't think we do, right? Whatever they recommend to people, like in their emails and stuff and their support.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing like direct that you can do. You can't request things or something like that, but just by virtue of selling more, and convince, and I know I keep using the word convince, but it's almost like you're training Amazon of like, this is, if you show my book to this type of reader, then they'll continue to do it. And there's different ways to increase your ranking within the kind of algorithmic list, known as the popularity list, to be included in more of those emails and show up higher in search results and things like that.
Yeah, it's fun. I've had this happen a couple times where friends that I know, I get an email and it's like, this book is recommended for you. I'm like, oh, there's my friend. So because I've bought a book online or one similar, but like I know Lindsay Brackett's one, and there was one other person, and I forget who the other person was, but I've seen their books and emails, and I'll take a screenshot. I'm like, you came in my email.
That's awesome.
So that's always fun. But again, it's because they, I've trained Amazon on what I look for. They know what I look for. And so then they send me these things. Now, sometimes they do send me things. I'm like, why in the world did you send me this? Like, I've never even looked at something like that.
Right.
Not like, so AI, sometimes it gets a little screwy. And it could be like it's a related item to something that I looked at, but it's nothing that I would want. But,
Right.
So there's always those kind of fun things. Well, thank you so much. We've actually gone almost 90 minutes here. So
Fantastic.
It's been a great conversation, and you've shared some valuable information. And just to remind you, take the Amazon Zero to Hero. You can get it go to this link and join for 50% off, not 505% off. And with the right code, and I'll go back in and fix that when we're done. But also I'll put it on the show notes as well. But thank you for everybody for being here, and I hope you will have a wonderful evening. And we will see you next week. I think next week is Christine Gritmon talking about personal branding and how it works for authors. And she is a little firecracker. I love her. And so you're going to have fun meeting Christine next week. So take care, and we will see you next week.
Thanks again, Joyce.
You're welcome. Hold on just a minute here. I got my. Oops.